Hey guys, it's the Soft Take. I just want to start off by saying that I don't intend to smear or slander Josh Peck and his podcast with this video. I simply want to call attention to the careless spread of misinformation and dangerous narratives that ultimately serve to dehumanize Palestinians all on his own platform. I'm talking about factually shallow takes like this.
Hamas is a terrorist organization that has terrorized not only the people of Israel, but the people of Palestine. The common enemy of the Palestinians and the Israelis is Hamas.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm sick of the recycled talking points that spin war crimes as self-defense for two parties. And if it isn't Josh echoing talking points used to justify actions like that, there is his co-host Ben Soffer, who doesn't just excuse the violence onto Palestinians, but actually openly endorses the continuation of it, seemingly, allegedly.
Even last night, Josh, we were talking about release of the hostages. They're not being released anymore. What happened?
They're not? Did Hamas back out? That is so Hamas of them.
They changed the terms. They're like, this isn't going to work for us. So, BH, it happens. I didn't mean to start us off on that note, but...
BH, it happens, absolutely.
Josh and I were vigorously texting as we do, night in and night out, politics. And, we started talking a little bit about the hostages and how... I'm just going to say it, Josh. I'm happy that the deal didn't go through. I know that that's a controversial statement because I want every freaking hostage back. But it was a raw deal. So I'd much prefer to see a better deal that doesn't include the trade of, 34 for 1,000? Was it that? 34 for 1,000? And these are 34 innocent people, and those are 1,000 convicted felons. And so it felt like a raw deal. So while I'm sad that we're not getting the hostages back, I do think it was a raw deal. That's all I'm saying.
As a consequence of the ceasefire falling through, a surprise attack took place on the Gaza Strip, which had ended the lives of more than 400 Palestinians. But it was a raw deal, guys. Didn't like the prisoner release ratio between Israel and Palestine. Besides Ben Soffer's enthusiasm for the collapse of a ceasefire deal, and his awareness of how controversial it is to think that,
I'm happy that the deal didn't go through. I know that that's a controversial statement.
Calling every single one of the detained Palestinians a convicted felon is both wildly inaccurate and just straight up dehumanizing. He is dehumanizing thousands of Palestinians. Being labeled a criminal by an occupying power doesn't automatically make it true. Take a look at the findings in Arbitrary by Default. A report by Defense for Children International shows that military courts have more than a 99% conviction rate for Palestinian defendants, and also states that Israel is the only country in the world that systematically prosecutes between 500 and 700 children in military courts each year. And according to Time, children get traumatic nighttime arrest rates in their homes, get painfully hand-tied, blindfolded, and transferred to detention on the floor of a military vehicle. So with practices like these, which I didn't even scratch the surface of, it sounds like prisoners are not convicted with a fair legal procedure and that military trials are systematically biased against Palestinians, particularly kids. Now, you'd hope Josh Peck would at least speak up, just on principle at least, on his own YouTube channel.
I think it was a raw deal, that's all I'm saying.
Yes, and you revealed, and I think it's worth talking about because I'm sure you have thoughts about it that you don't share with me. You and I, we debate over text, and by that I mean I send you chunks. It looks like we're in a breakup.
I'll save us time from watching this clip and just say that nothing further was added. Now, it's disturbing that Josh Peck and Ben Soffer would joke around with this, and it might leave you wondering, what is this? Why is it always like this when the people in the podcast wear headphones? And also, who is this guy? Well, for starters, this is a podcast called The Good Guys, and it is genuinely a podcast that focuses on comedy and celebrity pop culture, and often a platform to get old colleagues from the past to catch up and have a conversation with, like Drake Bell. Just every now and again, politics arises, and oh boy, do they get it wrong.
What we all knew subconsciously as Jews as that was unfolding was there's only a matter of time before the narrative shifts. And so I think people were very quick, you, myself, and just proud Jews in general, wanted to make sure that everybody understood this was unprovoked and what you're going to see is going to happen from this. There's going to be a response and it's just going to turn anti-Semitic.
And before we unpack all of this, it would help to first get acquainted with these two. If you don't know Josh Peck, he's the Josh from Drake and Josh. He was that funny, chubby guy from Nickelodeon. And for those that haven't heard about him in a while, he's had a few movies since his Nickelodeon roles, and throughout the years, he sort of built a successful reputation for being a fun, harmless, and unproblematic guy on social media. And now, I want to emphasize how disorienting it is to see someone like Josh Peck repeating and echoing hardcore Israeli propagandist talking points, the kind that works as a mask to excuse collective punishment against Palestinians, whether or not he's aware of that. That's Josh Peck, and the other host is Ben Soffer, who goes by the handle Boy With No Job on Instagram. He's a social media personality with a pretty substantial following on Instagram with about 1.4 million followers. That's pretty crazy. His main content is just food and cooking along with humorous millennial life things. Very cool. Now, it might be a bit dramatic to have made an hour-long video about these two and the other interesting individuals that I will talk about later on, but I want to take this moment to not only show how someone's old, beloved funny guy from the past, or even today, can end up on the wrong side of history, but also to shine a light on the conversations that are happening right now and recently. Obviously, these guys are very far from the worst that this world has to offer, and I'm not looking to hold them overly accountable. Just keep in mind that their words reflect a wider perspective that countless others are echoing. And just to be crystal clear, this is where my criticism is rooted. It has nothing to do with the fact that they're Jewish or that a large part of their podcast focuses on sharing relatable Jewish experiences, which is something that they clearly embrace.
Jews, how does it feel to be Jewish lately?
Pretty
Anything
great.
going on?
Pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah.
It's
I
back,
love it.
baby.
I love it.
Yes.
I'm just talking about Israel's historical and ongoing policies. Just want to be clear, considering that at least one of them is a little generous with accusations of anti-Semitism.
Currently recording during Hanukkah, and I saw that you posted first night of Hanukkah, gorgeous menorah, and all of a sudden flooded under your comments anti-Semitism. And all I want to say is this is the problem. I don't want to go too deep into it, but I just want to say everybody says that what's going on in Israel has nothing to do with the Jews here. And all I want to say is then why, when Josh Peck posts a lovely photo of his menorah, is it met with Free Palestine? Those are completely different things.
I will
Merry
say,
Christmas.
Which, just to quickly note, likely a response to Josh Peck signing the CCFP open letter affirming Israel's right to defend itself. Now, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, Josh and Ben's commentary 2 days after October 7th, 2023.
What great gas prices. Well, should we talk about Israel? Because I think we'd be remiss to not get into it.
Yeah, sorry for all that upfront fluff. We didn't want to dive straight in, but we have to dive straight in. It just...
Yes.
So we are recording this episode on Monday.
Today's
Monday
the 9th.
After just a horrendous, such a tragic weekend of terrible injustice in Israel and everything that's going on. We wanted to not dampen the mood. Like, this is obviously a comedy podcast, but we certainly wanted to really just brought awareness to what is a very cut and dry issue. There are terrorists on one side and civilians on the other. And anybody that feels otherwise hasn't done enough research. They haven't done enough research. It's not the people of Gaza versus the people of Israel. It's the people of Israel versus a terrorist organization that has unfortunately taken complete control over Gaza and its people.
I know we've heard this countless times before, and you're probably as sick as I am of hearing this. Okay, if we're talking about terrorists on one side and civilians on the other, we create a narrative where Palestinians exist only as terrorists. And once again, Israel is framed as fighting only terrorists. Every bombing, every slain journalist or medic, every slain teacher and child, every dead mother and father, every forceful displacement is sold as counter-terrorism. All lives lost along the way are just written off as collateral damage. One of hundreds of examples for that is the lost life of Palestinian-American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh while covering a raid on a refugee camp in the occupied West Bank. She did not get killed by the common enemy, but by the IOF in 2022. Israel's story of why that happened went from Palestinian gunmen did it, and then after pressure from humanitarian organizations, to maybe an Israeli soldier did it. That's one of the many things you're doing when you're trying to frame it as just
terrorists on one side and civilians on the other.
Palestinians never get to be civilians, and Israel never gets held accountable, even when they wear clearly marked press vests. And by the way, during her own funeral, the Israeli riot police would beat the pallbearers, causing them to briefly drop her casket. But what is actually a cut and dry issue is how contradictory they are with the idea that no lives should be lost on both sides.
And what's going on is terrible. It's terrible. We don't want any lives lost on any side. I want to be like abundantly clear on that point, that it's death is terrible. But what's been happening over the weekend is we will see Israeli women and children and the elderly raped and captured and held hostage. And somehow, some way, we have people saying they deserved it. And it's like, who deserved it? Who deserved what? Like, what are you talking about? Like, if there was a video, and when there are videos, God forbid, of Hamas terrorists holding children in front of them as human shields, and you see them perish, it's the saddest thing. It's horrible. It's like complete injustice.
This is an old, ongoing claim by Israel used countless times in the past, and it was never confirmed by any credible source. Nothing new here. This Amnesty International report from 2009 reads, "It found no evidence that Hamas or other fighters directed the movement of civilians to shield military objectives from attacks. However, there is credible evidence that Israel uses human shields." From the same report by Amnesty International in 2009, it states that, in several cases, Israeli soldiers also used civilians, including children, as human shields, endangering their lives by forcing them to remain in or near houses which they took over and used as military positions. And maybe the Good Guys podcast could benefit from hearing testimonies like from this IOF sergeant who talks about first-hand experiences during his military service in Gaza. He says, 2 young men were randomly chosen to serve as shields. One of them couldn't have been more than 16 years old, practically a child. Or this former lieutenant who was stationed in the Bethlehem area, which, by the way, is in the West Bank and considered occupied territory under international law, recalls how they stopped a Palestinian guy who was just passing by and tied him to the hood of a jeep as a moving shield to prevent stones being thrown at their jeep. These are first-hand accounts from Israeli former IOF soldiers, and there are many more when you Google breaking the silence. And if this isn't enough, how about the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child reports that mentions, next to other horrific events, several times the use of Palestinian children as human shields by the Israeli military? If you have it in you, I recommend reading these reports. I'll link them in the description. This one is from 2013, and the stuff you find in there truly makes your stomach turn upside down. Shows a reality many try to ignore. One that is not portrayed in this podcast commentary. And moving on, saying
Hamas terrorists holding children in front of them as human shields, and you see them perish
seems like a good justification when having to explain why Israeli forces have brutally killed 17,000 children. But for Ben, it seems Gaza's society is an inherently vile one, dangerous and unworthy of sympathy in any case.
And any rational person will admit that any death on any side in this conflict is so unnecessary and terrible, but the realities of it are you can't negotiate and work with terrorists. If you read the Hamas charter, it says death to all Jews. That's their goal. Their goal is kill Jews, kill the state of Israel, and honestly, kill Western culture. Like, that's what's so shocking to me. These people living in America that are standing on their high horses supporting Gaza and saying that Israel is wrong, they want to kill you too. They want to kill you too. They want to kill everybody because they like their old world way of doing things where women who drive cars are murdered, where if you show a public display of affection, you're murdered. If you show too much skin, if you're gay, they throw you off a roof.
Just purely for the purpose of getting things correct here, no, the 37-year-old Hamas charter from 1988 does not say death to all Jews. However, it does contain very explicit anti-Semitic language and calls for fighting Jews. An updated 2017 document already phrased it differently and reads, Hamas affirms that its conflict is with the Zionist project, not with Jews because of their religion. It further emphasizes Hamas does not wage a struggle against the Jews because they are Jewish, but wages a struggle against the Zionists who occupy Palestine. So I'll leave it up to you to decide how much truth lies in Ben Soffer's words here. Are there any verified cases of women being actually executed or killed for driving? Not one. And then he says they throw gay men off of roofs. Is he referring to that video that was falsely captioned as Hamas executing gay people? The one that's already been debunked by multiple sources? And having said that, would these be their justifications or explanations as to why Israel keeps attacking Palestinian hospitals, all 19 universities in Gaza, schools, or humanitarian convoys? He describes Palestine like it's a hellscape straight out of a post-apocalyptic film, and Israel's actions start to look like a mission of salvation. I'd like to show you briefly what Palestine looked like before Israel bombed Gaza to the ground. What Ben leaves out is Palestine used to be a place where people studied, worked, raised their children, and welcomed tourists from all around the world. We talked about Bethlehem in the context of Israeli military using Palestinians as mobile human shields, but Bethlehem also used to be a popular tourist spot to visit the Church of the Nativity. Not far from there, people walked through the bustling streets and the markets of Ramallah, or traveled to the Dead Sea in Jericho. Anyway, there was so much to unpack from that, but Josh has been awfully quiet. Let's hear what he's got to say about it.
Like, do some research and realize who you're supporting. And so I really unleashed there, but it's just some of the small things that I'm feeling over the weekend, just very lost and helpless. But it's so important that we speak about these topics.
You know, we're a very uniquely, proudly Jewish. I don't want to call it a Jewish podcast because it's not called Good Guys. It's just Good Guys. But, you know, we're proud to be Jewish. We talk about it a lot, and it's something that is within our hearts. And I can't speak for every Jewish person, but I know Ben and I feel this deeply, that our connection to Israel and having a homeland and having one unique place on this earth that is, you know, connected to our culture, to our religion, that is a Jewish state, makes it incredibly important to us. And so when tragedies and things are happening on that part of the world, we feel uniquely connected to it. And I agree completely with Ben. Like, Hamas is a terrorist organization that has terrorized not only the people of Israel, but the people of Palestine. The common enemy of the Palestinians and the Israelis is Hamas. And it means that innocent people will have to be hurt and will have to die. And it's a tragedy, no matter who they are, to see that on both sides.
Again, the idea that Palestine and Israel have a common enemy is a distraction to frame the conflict as symmetrical, as if both sides are working together to defeat their threat. But in reality, Palestinians face their greatest threat from Israel's ongoing occupation. It's also important to note that Hamas was founded in 1987. Israel's policies of occupation and settlement expansion long predate this. What were they fighting about in the 40 years prior to that? The Kafir Qasim massacre in 1956, where Israeli border police ended the lives of 49 unarmed Palestinian citizens that included the elderly, women, and children. In the Palestinian town Kafir Qasim for violating a curfew they weren't even informed about. And due to recent court documents in 2022, the UN Human Rights Council states that the Kafir Qasim massacre is categorically an act of wider Israeli ethnic cleansing. This was not an isolated or single massacre and was not done by Hamas, but by Israel. And there are so many examples. I wonder who the hundreds of Palestinian children would point the enemy to be after Israeli airstrikes hit dozens of their schools in May 2021. Or when kids were left without access to education after Israeli authorities demolished and confiscated Palestinian school buildings in the West Bank. That's 2019. During the war in 2008 to 2009, the IOF found it necessary to shell in close proximity to the Palestine Red Crescent Society's Al-Quds Hospital in Gaza City. In July 2014, the only rehabilitation hospital in Gaza was shelled multiple times. Patients had to be evacuated under fire. Amnesty and Human Rights Watch called it a war crime because no evidence was found that it was a military target. Focusing on Hamas as the common enemy is turning a blind eye to the countless atrocities that Israel, as an occupying power, has done to a population under occupation, Palestinians. Hamas didn't bulldoze villages in 1948, build settlements in the West Bank, keep Gaza under siege for nearly 2 decades. That was all Israel. And now what also gets overlooked is the failure to do the bit of advice they give next.
And it's heartbreaking as a father. It just kills me to watch it. It feels closer than ever to see the amount of death and loss on both sides. So, you know, I think people need to, I think they need to listen to people who are more familiar with the situation right now and not rush to the internet to say something that they truly don't understand.
I agree with Josh here. Let's listen to some people who can give some first-hand accounts. Gabor Mate, whose Jewish family almost got deported during the Holocaust and who once called himself a Zionist, describes the Israel he saw.
Couldn't have created that exclusive Jewish state without oppressing or expelling the local population. It's the longest ethnic cleansing operation in the 20th and 21st centuries. It's still going on.
Archbishop Desmond Tutu, a human rights activist who fought apartheid and saw oppression up close. He visited Israel long before October 7th, 2023, and said this:
I have visited the occupied Palestinian territories and have witnessed the humiliation of Palestinians at Israeli military checkpoints. This treatment is familiar to me and the many black South Africans who were corralled and harassed by the security forces of the apartheid government.
Or Holocaust survivor Stephen Kaposh, who became an important voice for Palestinian suffering.
Part of my family ended up in Israel, and when I visited them, I was completely shocked how, with their background suffering during the Holocaust, they still, many of them, became very racist. And I couldn't understand that.
Or how about a testimony from an American surgeon who volunteered in Gaza twice since October 7th, 2023.
I did not see or treat a single combatant during my 5 weeks in Gaza. My patients were 6-year-olds with shrapnels in their and bullets in their and pregnant women whose pelvises had been
And now they have a go with a bit of history.
Completely agree. And I think the biggest point of misinformation is that the Jews have never proposed a solution to the current problem. Up until 2005, Gaza was a part of Israel. And we finally just said, here, have Gaza, because we proposed so many versions of a two-state solution or of harmony that were time after time rejected because Hamas does not want to live with Israel. Hamas does not want to live with Jews. They want to obliterate Israel or control Israel and of the Jews.
Not even Israel's prime minister at the time, Ariel Sharon, gave that as a reason to withdraw from Gaza in 2005. Whilst he sold it as a security measure, his own senior advisor, Dov Weisglass, openly said in an interview in 2004 with Haaretz that the goal of the disengagement plan, the name of the plan to withdraw from Gaza, was to freeze negotiations and avoid pressure for a genuine two-state solution. The disengagement plan is actually formaldehyde. It supplies the amount of formaldehyde that's necessary so that there will not be a political process with the Palestinians. And can I just point out how chilling the choice of words are here? Formaldehyde being a chemical used to preserve a corpse. There's an entire thing behind the manipulative move of withdrawing from Gaza, and this video isn't about that, but I just want to point out that it is at this point we can look back at what American Palestinian historian Rashidi Khalidi said in an interview with Haaretz, that Israelis live in a bubble of false consciousness that their media and their politicians create for them. Ben Soffer is not from Israel, but he seems to be in the very bubble that Rashidi Khalidi is talking about here. And by being in that bubble, he is making it sound like Israel acted generously and that Gaza was then fully independent. But that is actually bullshit. There is a notably massive difference between proposing peace and demanding Palestinians accept permanent occupation with better branding. I'm not going to dive into these proposals because I don't want this video to be longer than it already is, but a YouTuber called Overzealots made a really brilliant video debunking the lie that every proposal gets rejected. It's really well researched and backed with citations. And I will just say that if you remind yourself that these proposals came from an occupying power, then it is legitimized oppression that is getting rejected. And unfortunately, they go down a road of making seriously misrepresentative claims about the people trying to bring attention to the situation.
And I posted something on my Instagram story yesterday, which is there was a rally, or it's not a rally, there was a celebration somehow held in Times Square celebrating the deaths of all of the Israeli people on the Palestinian side, and there were swastikas at this rally.
A fringe individual showing up with a swastika is disgusting. But to twist that into this is who these people are and what the rally was about is also disgusting. And to call the said rally a celebration of all Israeli deaths is pretty convenient if you aim to deliberately smear pro-Palestinian voices. The organizers themselves of the rally that took place on October 8th in Times Square was a demonstration of solidarity with Palestinians. The rally wasn't about reveling in tragedy, but instead about rejecting the idea that Palestinians must quietly endure injustice forever. They were calling attention to life under blockade, imprisonment without trial, the promotion of settlements, and daily humiliation. There's an entire statement from the organizers that make it crystal clear. They even state near the end that history will remember those that make smear attempts as morally wrong and cowardly efforts to silence justice. I'd be worried about being on the wrong side of that one. And now begins the whitewashing.
And people, I posted it because people are constantly saying that it's not anti-Semitic to be anti-Zionist, and I can't express how wrong that is. It is so right to say that you have a problem with the Israeli government, right? No question. You can absolutely disagree with your government and still be a Zionist. To be a Zionist means that you think that the Jews have a right to a country. That's what it means. It means that we have a right to a place where we can call our home.
That's actually incorrect if you look at history and practice of what Zionism is and has relied on. When you make Zionism sound innocent like he does, you're taking away the colonial context and the violence that has come from it. Truth is that Zionism wasn't just about having a country, it was about building that country in Palestine, a land already inhabited by another people who had lived there for centuries. Up until this podcast episode aired, Israel's establishment dates back 75 years. Ben Soffer leaves out that the result of Zionism includes the displacement of 700,000 Palestinians in the Nakba, the destruction of hundreds of villages, denying refugees to return, occupying more and more land with Palestinians under military law, the continuation of Israeli settlements which are considered illegal under international law, many wars throughout the decades, resulting in the death of thousands of Palestinian civilians, putting Gaza under blockade since 2007, the limitation of food and medical supply as well as movement, Israeli checkpoints, travel restrictions, systemic discrimination. Before this podcast aired, multiple humanitarian organizations described the Zionist project, Israel, as apartheid. If Zionism had simply meant a peaceful, equitable homeland for Jewish people, we wouldn't be here talking about this. Ben also leaves out that many Jews are not, and never were, Zionists. Plenty have opposed it, seeing it as a secular nationalist project. And if someone would blame all Jewish people around the world for Israel's actions, yeah, that would be anti-Semitic, no doubt. But opposing Zionism, which is colonialism, occupation, and has resulted in apartheid and genocide, nah, that's defending human rights.
And that doesn't mean that other people can't call it their home too. If you've been to Israel, you know that there's the Muslim quarter, the Christian quarter. Like it's so peaceful there. There's Palestinians, there's Muslims, there's Jews, there's everyone. Like it's the most harmonious, beautiful country. It is like, I think it's home to the second largest pride parade in the world.
It's not home to the second largest pride parade in the world.
Behind the United States. Sits in the middle of the Middle East, in between Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt. There's this mecca of just like incredible, what's the word? It's just an unbelievable place. And I lost my train of thought. It's just terrible.
Okay, let's unpack that, I guess. What Ben describes as the harmonious country, Israel, with its Christian quarters and Muslim quarters, I would word a bit differently. The Christian and Muslim quarters are not part of Israel proper. You find them in the old city of Jerusalem, right over here. More specifically, in East Jerusalem. East Jerusalem was captured by Israel in the 1967 war. They annexed it later, but it was never recognized under international law and considered illegal. That means even the UN considers East Jerusalem as occupied Palestinian land, not Israel proper. So when Ben points to a Muslim and Christian quarter as proof of Israel's peaceful diversity, he's misleading. These quarters are historic neighborhoods, not examples of modern integration. And the residents are living under occupation with restricted rights and decades of systemic control by Israeli authorities. Another thing Ben leaves out, again, before Israel marched in and established Israel in 1948, Jerusalem was actually a very diverse city in Palestine, home to Muslims, Jews, and Christians. Fast forward to 2009, and the US State Department for International Religious Freedom reports many of the national and municipal policies in Jerusalem were designed to limit or diminish the non-Jewish population of Jerusalem. What happened? The most peaceful place restricts Palestinians from building or expanding homes. Israel is not handing out permits to Palestinians to build anything. This includes businesses. Jewish settlers are encouraged to move to East Jerusalem, even in violation of international law, and force Palestinians out of their own homes. I could go on and on for a while, talk about the wall Israel started building during the Second Intifada. You have Israel on one side claiming its purpose is to prevent suicide bombings, and you have Palestinians on the other side being cut off from the city, from their farmland. their schools and workplaces, separating families, all while annexing more land. And who knows, if Israel wouldn't have demolished the almost 800-year-old Moroccan quarter, maybe it would have also made it onto Ben's list of places that prove how peaceful life in Israel is for everyone. But what I actually want to say is that Ben and I live in very different realities, and that I hope the links I provide in the description or this video in itself can help give you a broader, more in-depth look into
The most harmonious, beautiful country.
No, I agree, and I think that people need to really, I think the thing that I'm most proud of, it's not about just having, in quotes, a homeland or having a place that's uniquely Jewish. It's that Israel stands for democracy. It stands for a place where you can be safe to love who you want to love, that the LGBTQ plus community is completely free to live, to feel pride, to be public with however they, however people want to live their life.
Actually, queer Palestinian groups like Al-Qaz have spoken out against Israel's use of LGBTQ plus rights as PR. Al-Qaz has described this as pinkwashing, erasing Palestinian queer struggles while using queer rights to cover up human rights abuses.
That women are granted full rights, that there is a representation in the Knesset, which is Congress, of Muslim people, of Arab people, of Christians, of Jews, and that inevitably, and to Ben's point, that if people do have issues with the leaders of the country, if they don't agree with the government, as we deal with here in America and so many other places in the world, if you disagree with how things are being run, you have a chance to protest peacefully and to vote those leaders out.
What was Ben saying about a certain peaceful protest earlier?
There was a celebration somehow in Times Square celebrating the of all of the Israeli people on the Palestinian side.
When Josh is talking about full rights for women, do not get it confused. He's talking about Israeli women, not Palestinians living in the occupied territories under Israeli military law. And when he is talking about the citizens having a possibility to vote their leaders out or protest peacefully, this again only refers to Jewish Israeli citizens. For example, the people from the Muslim and Christian quarter we just talked about, Palestinians in East Jerusalem have a complex situation going on. They are considered, by Israel, permanent residents of Israel. They are not full citizens and thus cannot vote in national elections. To get basic rights, you could, in theory, apply for Israeli citizenship and pledge loyalty to the state that occupies you. But is that a choice or a test of submission? So the narrative that Israel is a democracy is not the full truth. In practice, it is an ethnocracy. And it's quite hard to sum up how deeply Israel discriminates against non-Jewish Israelis without diving into a lot of background. But let's definitely keep track of what human rights organizations are reporting, like land discrimination. The Israel Land Administration, which manages and allocates 93% of the land in Israel, was found to use the overwhelming majority of land in Israel to serve only one community, Jewish Israelis. Or what about the citizenship and entry into Israel law that was passed in the Knesset, which bars granting Israeli citizenship to Palestinians from the West Bank and Gaza who marry Israeli citizens? Or what kind of democratic country maintains a two-track citizenship structure that, again, treats Palestinians unequally as compared to Jewish Israelis? This list can go on and on, but let's not forget, it doesn't matter how democratic a country claims to be if it's using that freedom to justify all of what it does to Palestine. Anyway, whilst I was making this video, I got to learn a little bit more about Ben Soffer, and I want to show you what I found. Not to dunk on him or anything like that, but because it's genuinely interesting to get to know the person behind the mindset, or how his talking points might have been shaped. So, for starters, he's a fan of Elon Musk.
Wasn't he put in a position where it was something like $6 billion could solve world hunger? And Elon was like, if that's true, I'm in.
Because it's not true. Like, he calls bullshit on these things.
Right.
Like, it's not. How is that possible? It's not true. It's not. That's one thing that I'm excited about, just because I do love Elon Musk, and I think he's really smart. And I have gone on record saying I don't like villainizing smart people, which I think we just do. Of course, he has his quirks. Like, what genius isn't nutty? But I'm excited to see what he does over the next 4 years with more power. It could be the ultimate villain story, or it could be really cool. Who knows? That's I'll do that prediction. I think it's going to be really cool.
This was said less than 2 weeks before Elon Musk went on stage on Trump's inauguration and pulled what started widespread criticism. But not for Ben Soffer, because as far as I could see, he never reflected on his own prediction. And it made me realize the double standard that we deal with here. Elon Musk gets a pass for pulling an unmistakable gesture known for its anti-Semitic meaning, but ordinary people protesting Israel's policies in New York Times Square are instantly labeled anti-Semitic for one fringe person's action. But come on, he wouldn't defend Musk in other cases tied to anti-Semitic claims, would he?
You see this Elon thing with his chatbot?
No.
Google this.
Okay.
This is a good story, and I don't know all the details.
The AI chatbot Grok, which is produced by Elon Musk's XAI, wrote numerous anti-Semitic social media posts Tuesday after the artificial intelligence company released a revamped version of it over the posts range from alleging patterns about Jewish people to praising Hitler. Yikes.
Isn't that weird? And by the way, this is not me saying that just because Elon Musk has his name on it that I think he's an anti-Semite. I thought that this was just interesting and the power of AI.
Tell me what you think. I don't know. I don't know the answer. But I know, there is this famous New Yorker article called The World According to Elon Musk's Grandfather, What Happened to Anti-Semitic Rants Before Social Media. I think in Elon's life, there was a big influence of anti-Semitism coming from the grandfather, from his father, who famously, was an abusive, horrible guy. And then Elon got in trouble for spouting some anti-Semitic bullshit that was when Ben Shapiro and the rest of the people got on him. And to his credit, he did a pretty big reversal, mea culpa, and went to Israel and educated himself. But I think when these things like the salute, like Grok, having a bit of a moment, it's not out of nowhere. There is some evidence to suggest there could have been some influence.
Could be.
What do you think?
No, I don't know. I always hate blaming the CEO of a company for something that happens in their AI. He has 1,000 million engineers that work for X and 1 million people that work. I'm not saying that you can't look at the wealth of information in front of you and then say, oh, maybe it was because he has anti-Semitic leanings, but he owns it. It's a $1 billion company, right? It's not every single AI input is run by him. It's not like Elon's personal opinions. It's the chats, right? But I hear the other things that you're saying, so it's possible.
Because I remember Grok spouted something the other day, and he publicly said oh, this is no good. You're getting updated, right? So when he says something like that, clearly there's some knobs that can be turned to have it lean or have a proclivity for something. It's not its own sentient thing. I don't think.
So let's see what he says about Grok, and we'll talk about it the next time. Seriously.
Impressive how much benefit of the doubt a billionaire gets for echoing things straight out of anti-Semitic history. Yet ordinary people never get that same level of consideration. Nor does someone that's been making headlines lately for having the interests of people in mind in his own city, Zohran Mamdani. Ben Soffer went on Fox News Business and he had this to say.
He once again refused to condemn the phrase, globalize the intifada. All right, joining me now is Ben Soffer. He's Jewish, lives in New York, he's got a young family. If this guy wins, you're leaving?
I must say it's quite fascinating to see him ask if he's going to leave behind his entire life in New York City because someone that criticizes Israeli policy might become mayor.
First of all, thank you for having me on the show. Mentioned, big fan of yours. Am I leaving? I hope not. Hopefully we can galvanize the troops and we can win in November. I don't know who's winning. We need to figure that out first.
Are a lot of Jewish folks thinking about leaving?
Yeah, we're very afraid.
I can't help but feel that it oversteps a few boundaries to speak as if his personal feelings represent those of the whole Jewish community in New York, suggesting that everyone shares his fear.
That's the big topic of conversation. I'm born and raised in New York, 33 years old, grew up here, never left, in Manhattan, high school, college, public school. I've never ever thought that I would need to leave because I was afraid to be openly Jewish here.
Is it the atmosphere surrounding Jewish folks as you walk around New York City?
It's the way that Mamdani and his constituents are turning Zionism into a slur. It's not a slur to want to be proudly Jewish and to feel that Jews have a right to a homeland. It's not. And that's exactly what's happening right now. They're hiding behind that anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are not the same thing, and they are. Yeah. They are. To those people, I say, what are you, nuts?
Wait. That's a line they use in his podcast. This isn't his podcast.
If it was any other minority group that was treated the way Jews have been treated in New York and elsewhere in America, somebody would be in prison.
Absolutely.
Gross double standard.
Absolutely. But when it comes to Jews, for whatever reason, people turn a blind eye. They don't see it the same way, because Jews are seen as these white, rich people, and it's just not true. That's why they're able to say things like apartheid in Israel. It's not, or colonizers. It's not. Because we're not just white.
That's kind of missing the point. People aren't saying Israel's an apartheid state because Jews are white. They're saying it because Palestinians live under different laws. Anyway, I want to move on and point out the hypocrisy that happens today with people like Ben. He's able to make posts about cooking what seems to be pretty damn good food on his Instagram, or how he can make fun little promotional reels about his own drink brand. Don't get me wrong, he's a social media influencer. He's allowed to. But then he also gets to go on television to stir up fear, talking about being afraid of fleeing his home in New York. But the policies he defends don't allow children in Gaza to know what a safe, loving family feels like, whether he realizes it or not. That's the reality he's helping to justify. I'm not saying he shouldn't share the luxuries of his life, but what I hope is that one day, Ben and people like him will recognize the hypocrisy of fearing a non-existent threat while enjoying an air-conditioned apartment, all while distorting the truth in ways that make it harder to shine a light on real injustices. Injustices faced by people who don't have air conditioning, who instead might have IOF soldiers raiding their homes, posing in front of their mother's undergarments as if Palestinian suffering is nothing more than a soldier's photo op. And what I mean by non-existent threat is that Zohran Mamdani, the person that has supposedly created so much fear among the Jewish community, according to Ben, has actually been consistently vocal about his care and solidarity with the Jewish community.
I've said at every opportunity that there is no room for anti-Semitism in this city, in this country. And I've said that because that is something I personally believe. And it pains me to be called an anti-Semite. It pains me to be painted as if I am somehow in opposition to the very Jewish New Yorkers I know and love and that are such a key part of this city. And yet I know that when I share that emotion, I continue to face a language as if I am a beast.
But now, ladies and gentlemen, it gets worse. Yes, it does. When you Google Ben Soffer, the title underneath his name is Claudia Oshry's husband, and that made me realize two things. One, since when does Google title you as someone's husband or wife? Thought that was kind of interesting. I hadn't seen that one before. And two, he is Claudia Oshry's husband. You see, in the past months, I've been going down a rabbit hole of podcasts that spew pro-Israel rhetorics, and one podcaster I learned on, two actually, that sends shivers down my spine is Claudia Oshry and her sister Jackie Oshry.
I think everybody everywhere can acknowledge and feel for innocent Palestinians living in Gaza, like for real.
Hosts of the Toast podcast, formerly known as the Morning Toast.
And to put any blame.
And let's just say, this is a podcast that makes people I've talked about in the past look like academics.
And I am the fucking legend.
And to put any blame on what's going to happen to them on Israel is shameful and anti-Semitic, because anything that happens to an innocent person in Gaza is at the sole responsibility of their elected officials. And their elected officials, their government, is Hamas, the official Black Lives Matter organization that so many of us rallied behind, who has historically stood up for civil rights. To see them come out with a statement for all of their chapters that they stand with Palestine, like, was so vile and so disgusting. And I know that doesn't represent a lot of the Black community. No, if you are a Jew living in Europe, like, it's so dramatic to say, but like, get the fuck out. Like,
right.
Seriously.
I mean, we've always thought that, but this is one step further. It's that a Jew can't visit Europe, because it wasn't like Jews living in Amsterdam.
And you know what? We'll be okay. We'll be okay. They don't even have air conditioning over there. Come to America. It's great here.
Yeah.
In America, it's like this dumb war of statements.
Dumb war of statements, and it's like, you know, there's bad on both sides. No, that's not what it is. This is good versus evil. Israel's going to defend itself now, and people are going to die, and Israel's going to go out of their way to make sure there's as few civilian casualties as possible. They before they started dropping bombs, they said women, because hundreds and thousands of rockets are even sent from Gaza every single day into Israel, and they are intercepted by the Iron Dome, so they don't have the intended effect that Hamas is intending for them to have. Netanyahu, who's the prime minister of Israel, was meeting with the Red Cross, those useless pieces of shit. And he was like, you guys need to put public pressure on Hamas to release the hostages. And the Red Cross woman, who this was her first time, the head of the Red Cross, her first time going to Israel since the start of the war, said, we can't put public pressure on Hamas. They'll just close the door to us. And he was like, why don't you try?
Right.
What if you just tried something? Before they started dropping bombs, they said women, children, civilians,
go to the shores.
Out.
Go north. Go north.
There's 2 borders outside of Gaza. People don't understand this.
Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this.
The Gaza Strip borders Israel on one side, where that's how they got into massacre, Slaughterfest, Fest 2023. And they also, in the south, border Egypt. If they want to get out of Gaza, go to Egypt.
Oh, they can't, Jackie.
Why?
Palestinians living in Gaza are not allowed into Egypt.
Why, Claudia?
I don't know. Why doesn't somebody ask Egypt?
Why? Where's Egypt? You guys,
and
bring
keep
up
in mind,
Egypt. Why don't you, instead of, well, I don't support that Israeli government, what about Egypt? Where the fuck are you at?
No, and by the way,
because of course Israel's not going to let those people in right now, because when they let those people in, you saw what happened.
And by the way, for many years, you were allowed to, there wasn't like a big border between Israel and Gaza. Like you could roam freely. And you know what happened? People roamed freely with bombs on their chests.
Right.
And they blew up a Sbarro pizza shop and they blew up buses. So that's why we are where we are now, where you can't just freely roam in.
No, and there's a checkpoint where you have to get searched so that you don't enter with weapons. Like, there's history there. It's not this way for no reason. Israel has been so fucking patient with these monsters.
Yeah.
They're out of time.
These
Even
monsters.
for days, they're still telling people to go. If Hamas doesn't let the women and children go, and they still want to plant their children in front of their rocket launchers, and the rocket launchers need to be bombed, those deaths are on Hamas.
100%. Like, I think everybody everywhere
no, that you can't even go to a soccer game in Amsterdam. Like, and there were so many comparisons drawn to like Anne Frank. That's the city that she grew up in. Like, and we know how her story ended, and that like Amsterdam isn't safe for Jews in 2024 to live or to even visit.
Yeah,
is so crazy. Like, Europe is so far gone.
Yeah,
do not go and do not come.
Do not go.
Do not go. It was like serious, like 1930s style pogrom. That's what they used to be called, like back in Germany, back in Russia, when like gang violence would like organize themselves and attack Jews, attack Jewish businesses. And last night it was Jewish soccer fans, Israeli fans, so much so that Israel had to send 2 rescue planes to get the people out of there, and the police were doing nothing. They broke into the hotels where they were staying, throwing fireworks into the windows of hotels, beating up fathers who are with their children, beating up women. Don't you care about women?
Don't you care about women? No, you don't. It's disgraceful. It was really hard to watch, and like I'm sorry, like trigger warning. No, this is happening. So that happened.
Right. So that's why I didn't watch BFFs last night. And anyone who wants peace, like start with hostage release, and then maybe we can get towards peace. But there can't be peace when there are hostages in tunnels.
Release, then peace.
Release, then peace, then cease.
Ooh, I love. It would probably be release, then cease, then peace.
That could work.
That could work.
Cap, no cap.
Bussin'.
I know that was hard to watch, and if you feel like you lost some brain cells along the way, you're not alone. But I just want to quickly talk about the Oshry sisters because they appear later on with Josh Peck and Ben Soffer, and their history is just too wild to skip over. Claudia and Jackie Oshry host a more popular and well-known podcast that has gone through quite a number of falls from grace, mostly due to what some could interpret as Islamophobic comments, much of which has been deleted. For example, in response to a New York Times article about Obama likely visiting Israel in his second term, Jackie Oshry wrote in a tweet, "No thanks, there are enough unwanted Muslims there already." Or Claudia Oshry's tweets, inspired by far-right media narratives that believe falsely calling someone Muslim is an accusation. They reportedly apologized after these tweets resurfaced in 2018 and their show was cancelled. Although, if you try to find that apology today, you'll probably come across the tweets long before you ever find their response. Here's the one I found. That is not a reflection of who I am as a person today, and all I can do now is reflect and learn from this experience by showing everyone the good that is in my heart. Now, I don't want to call these ladies liars, but I certainly ain't gonna call them truthers. And the reason for bringing them up is not to rehash old drama, but to see how much of that same worldview still echoes in their content now. Because she apologized and promised self-reflection to show the good in her heart, and you could almost believe it. Almost. If you couldn't skip forward in time to January 2025 and them defending Elon Musk for what is widely recognized as a Nazi salute, which is a strange contradiction from two who have been so ready to call out any pro-Palestinian messages as anti-Semitic. And while trying to get to know these two a bit better, I found out that Claudia and Jackie's mother is seemingly one of America's most notorious right-wing extremists and anti-Muslim conspiracy theorists, Pamela Geller.
Is there such a thing, and what is meant by Islamophobia?
Islamophobia is a fictitious term. It's a construct.
Someone who created two movements that the Southern Poverty Law Center has designated as anti-Muslim hate groups. And even the ADL, known for defending the Israeli state so much, has Pamela Geller as an entry in the glossary of extremism and hate with the description, Pamela Geller is an anti-Muslim bigot who often exploits concern over terrorism to promote anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant conspiracy theories. And the UK actually banned her from ever entering the country in 2013 on the grounds that her presence wasn't conducive to the public good. There would be so much more to say about her, how she put hateful ads around the United States.
He supports a civilized man. And I can't get these ads up. I gotta sue. You know why I have to sue? Because I'm insulting the savages, that's why.
Or her Muhammad cartoon drawing contest that even made Trump say,
"What is she doing? She's taunting people."
Donald Trump is lashing out at the woman behind the cartoon exhibit depicting the Prophet Muhammad that sparked a terror attack.
I have absolutely no respect for her. She's putting people at great danger.
Anyway, let's check back on Posh Jack and Sen Boffer.
Should we get into, I want to do two What Are You Nutses for this episode, if that's okay with you. One, What Are You Nuts?
Take it away.
As it relates to this current climate and the situation going on in Israel. So my What Are You Nuts is for Mia Khalifa. Josh, do you want to describe who Mia Khalifa is?
Listen, first of all, Mia, up until the last week, big fan. No, I'm joking about all of it. You know, I listened to her on the Lance Armstrong podcast years ago, and she had this very interesting story about immigrating to America while she was in college, had a very brief sort of stint in pornography, became one of the biggest porn stars in the world.
Brief stint in porn, but at one point a porn star, right? We can agree on that. This is what Mia Khalifa, can someone please tell the freedom fighters in Palestine to flip their phones and film horizontal? Like, what are you, nuts? Like the most grotesque, disgusting, flip your phones and film horizontal, implying that she wants to see more of the murders, kidnaps, like just so unbelievably vile. And
but if anyone knows horizontal, it's Mia Khalifa. No.
And it's just so, like, when you start to dissect it, I wanted to talk about this because it's also so unbelievably moronic to think if she went to Gaza, she would be thrown off a roof in 6 seconds. Like the number one rule is you can't show skin. She's doing pornography. Like why is she defending a group of people that would literally kill her tomorrow? Literally kill her tomorrow. It's so does she hate Jews? Like I can't understand where somebody's head is at, and the like people have been canceled for so much less. Like it's the most unbelievable cancelable offense, and nobody will ever talk about it.
Yeah. Showing support to Palestinians, as she clarified in a tweet, can only root back to one thing: hating Jews. The classic attempt of preventing any further discussion by mocking the person, dismissing her credibility because of her former profession, portraying the people she shows support to as monsters that throw all kinds of people off of rooftops. And then, of course, use the moral weight of anti-Semitism.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it. What are you, nuts?
It's utter what are you nuts. And also, I will mention that on social media, I did share some posts about, you know, the tragedy of lives that were lost in Israel. And I then was tagged in posts on Twitter of me on a list of celebrity names. The headline of the tweet was "Celebrities to be canceled at a later date," and how unacceptable it is that I was writing anything, any amount of sympathy or empathy for the lives lost in Israel. And all I could think was, can you believe who's on this list? I thought, you know, Josh, you're not doing so bad. You were included with these celebrities. It's an awful thing to say.
Of course I wasn't on the list.
When you are in a position of having millions of subscribers, you're relatively high profile, and then October 7th is your breaking point, suddenly he's found his voice. The result of that is that people are going to hold you accountable for selective outrage. It's what happens when nothing is getting done to stop decades of violence against the people.
Before we wrap again, started with Israel, ended with normal. Just want to say again, Israel, we love you. We're with you. Any Israeli listeners, we hope that this is some kind of comic relief during just such a horrendous time. And we're in full support of you, and we love you.
The episode was originally recorded on the 9th and would release on the 16th. One day later, the UN came out with a statement saying that 4,200 lives had ended, over 1 million people displaced in just 10 days. This number continues to rise to this day. Also, on the same day the open letter Josh Peck had signed, supporting Israel's rights to defend itself, was published, Le Monde had published an article highlighting the death toll in the Gaza Strip to have risen to 1,200 plus people, and more than 338,000 people have been forced to flee their homes in the Gaza Strip. And can I also just note that this is also around a time when Israel's then defense minister, who some have previously perceived as a really good guy, Yoav Gallant, said that they are fighting human animals. And instead of rethinking their public statements on this matter, updating or revoking them, they start to get into stuff like this.
Speaking of, this is such a wild time in our world for politics and just interrelations between people and ethnicities and cultures. And I literally had almost gotten in a shouting match with who I thought was a friend of mine as of recently, where he was really trying to get me to understand that he's like, you don't understand, dude. There's good Jews like you, but then there's also bad Jews. And I'm like, stop right there. I was like, we'll never recover from what you just said. So we're not friends anymore.
Was this a good friend?
No, it's like, it's an old acquaintance. And but it was a reminder of like, this is what we're dealing with here.
I mean, I don't know if you saw maybe a week ago or so, Osama bin Laden was trending on TikTok because the Gen Zers found his open letter to America from when he blew up the Twin Towers, where he mentions that one of the reasons why he was justified in blowing up the Twin Towers and having the most horrific day in the history of America was because of Jews and Palestine. They all of a sudden, they're big bin Laden guys. Big bin Laden. They love bin Laden.
Wait, they're bullish on bin Laden?
You didn't see this? They were bullish on bin Laden. They were bullish on bin Laden.
It's absolutely important to call out anyone glorifying figures like bin Laden, but to bring that up in the context of people criticizing Israel for its actions in Palestine is a manipulative deflection. It is over a month since October 7th in this clip. There is so much you could talk about, and this was the thing to bring up to guilt people out of supporting justice by falsely linking them to terrorism. An analysis by NPR highlighted how performance of those TikToks was relatively tiny compared to trends and TikToks that actually go viral, and that it wasn't until a tweet and media coverage began covering this that views of that controversial hashtag started to skyrocket. Naturally, what happens when you start to sensationalize something? Though, as time went on, I couldn't help but notice that Josh started to avoid talking about the situation altogether because of how vague he started getting whenever the topic arose, like when it did while he was a guest on the Toast podcast in April 2024, because Claudia Oshry and Claudia Oshry's husband had to cancel their trip to Israel at a time when Iran retaliated Israel's airstrike on the Iranian consulate in Syria 2 weeks prior.
Claudia and Ben were supposed to go to Israel, which was why I was doing guest co-host week. Their trip was canceled because casual World War III started. Yes. So they didn't go to Israel, but they actually are taking the week off anyway because I had these guests planned. But what a crazy weekend. I feel like it kind of tracks that World War III would start the same weekend as Coachella.
Fair, yes. It's just like enough already. like something to just disrupt the second weekend. Anyone who bought tickets to the second weekend is going like, really? This now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's just so crazy. Iran attacked Israel with like over 300 missiles and drones, and thankfully they were intercepted by Israeli Air Force and some of their allies. But it's just a really fucking crazy time. So praying for everyone.
Praying for everyone.
For real.
It's living in that area of the world right now, but really just being an inhabitant of this world. It's an incredibly scary time as a parent and worrying about kids. And I would just, urge people to not like run to overly simplify it in a tweet or on social media, and like accept the nuance and the gravity of like what it must feel like to be living under the threat of that.
Yeah, that's very good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, well, without further ado, it is time for...
Or, right after a thoughtful discussion about how divisive people can be online when it comes to rebuilding the LA Palisades after the wildfires, acknowledging that there are people in those communities who genuinely need help, Ben says it reminds him of this.
When you brought up the right point, which is like so heavily politicized, what you made me think of is like there are wars and there are people dying and there are terrible things going on every single day across the entire world. Meanwhile, the only thing people want to talk about is Israel. And I'm not saying that there aren't terrible things going on. I'm just saying that you mentioned politics. There's a reason why the only thing that people seem to want to talk about is Israel. It's hard to even get people these days to talk about Russia. It's like there are active wars going on all over the world. And so it just makes you think, why do we only talk about California when it comes to a natural disaster? And why do we only talk about Israel when it comes to a war? So, Jews.
The Jews. By the way,
they're in California and they're in Israel. So,
no, sorry to say, we're everywhere, babe.
Yeah, we are.
We are. Really quick before we move on, can I read you? So Gavin Newsom, like him or not like him?
Super vague and not about to dive into any of that. However, in contrast to this, Ben Boy did not shy away from such a topic, particularly when it came to Palestinians getting acknowledged at the Oscars in 2025. Let me set the stage so that you can understand the clip I'm about to show you. Among the nominees were two films rooted in the enduring legacy of the Holocaust. One of them, The Brutalist, respectfully told a story about Jewish trauma in the post-Holocaust era. In that very film starred Guy Pearce, who stepped onto the red carpet wearing a Free Palestine lapel pin, a white dove clutching onto an olive branch, a universal symbol of peace worn at the Oscars. Also, Guy Pearce shook hands with the No Other Land filmmakers and gave them supportive pats on the back when that film had won its Oscar. And this is what Ben had to say.
Oscars.
Yeah.
The whole night. Piece of shite.
Yeah, it was definitely bad. I'm sure you guys like did this ad nauseum, but like I'll just say like one quick comment, which is you can't capitalize off of the Holocaust and be Free Palestine.
Oh, well, that's for damn sure.
You're more than welcome to, and I mean this wholeheartedly, like you can be Free Palestine. I can't control you. You can do whatever you want. You can have your own opinions. You can have your own thoughts. I'll have mine, but you cannot capitalize off of the death of Jews and then be Free Palestine. Yeah. One or the other.
That feels right. Feels
one
fair.
One of the other Guy Pearce. One or the other. One or the other. Pick and choose.
So Ben is saying that Guy Pearce is
capitalized off of the Holocaust
by acting in a film about post-Holocaust trauma, and therefore he has no right to support Palestinian rights because, according to Ben, it betrays or undermines Jewish memory. To suggest that a serious and highly acclaimed film, The Brutalist, one that engages with Holocaust legacy through trauma, to be some cash grab or exploitation, and to criticize Guy Pearce for supporting Palestine while ignoring that he acted in a film that dealt with Jewish trauma in a critical and respectful way, is, I believe, clear evidence that these people weaponize victimhood to shut down any narrative that doesn't serve their political comfort zone. Do these people have any battles bigger than brunch reservations, that has to be friendly fire, man. I thought Ben Boy was serious about historical Jewish suffering. And that's just one side to it. Performing in a story about Holocaust trauma and standing with Palestinians aren't contradictory. They're actually consistent. They both stem from a belief in the value of human life. Now, the only thing Ben was right about was that his wife and sister-in-law did talk about the Oscars previously. So ladies and gentlemen, the Toast Podcast.
And then for this film, which was like nominated in one of the categories normally people don't care about, like documentary short, it was called No Other Land to Have Won, which was like seriously like a propaganda film made about the war in Israel. For them to have won and then got up on stage and just like said to me like the most abhorrently offensive, unfactual things. Like to me, I wanted to turn the whole fucking thing off. I thought it was disgusting, like everything I've ever thought about Hollywood. And enough with the Jews run Hollywood, because if they did, like last night wouldn't have happened. So just please shut the fuck up. I wanted to turn it off, but I'm like, no, I did not come this far to only come this far. I watch these piece of shit movies. I'm going to see this through. So I will give my thoughts, and you know, I won't make everything about this, but I just needed to be said how personally offensive I found the whole night.
Yeah, first of all, I'm offended they started at 7 p.m. Like, some of us have shit to do.
I'm sorry, wait, one more thing that like added to my list of offensive. I said everyone. And then for that ugly fuck Guy Pearce, I've never even heard of him. Like, you come to the Oscars on the backs of a Holocaust movie and you wear your stupid, ugly Free Palestine pin. Like, you know nothing, you're an idiot, and I hate you.
Yeah, especially after the last few weeks when they've like, not that they ever hid who they were in Gaza, but like, they have been so horrible, literally dancing and parading around the coffins of Jewish babies. Like, this is what you want to say today? Really? Right. That's who you are? Like, it's really sickening. So I watched from like 7:40 up until No Other Land or whatever won the best documentary. I'm like, why am I watching this? What I watched wasn't even enjoyable. These people are morons. I don't like them. I don't like this. Like, let me...
Okay, that's enough of that rabble. To conclude, I must say it saddens me to see Josh Peck adapt to these talking points without ever speaking up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
There isn't anything beyond, it's sad to see what happens on both sides. The public acknowledgement of a genocide, Israel's war crimes, inhumane suffering of Palestinians. I don't hear those things from Josh Peck, who once signed the Creative Community for Peace open letter because he believes Israel has the right to defend itself. Alternatively, all I have seen him do is give these utterly misinformed, disrespectful, dehumanizing talking points a platform, and also agreeing with them. So now is the time to speak up. Countries are recognizing a Palestinian state, people are walking out on Netanyahu during his silly little presentation, and it is becoming more apparent than ever that Israel is turning up the propaganda many notches above 11. And for his co-host Ben Soffer, I'd suggest broadening the range of media he consumes, because apart from the dehumanizing talking points, I see a person in there that just doesn't quite get it. But then again, trying to have a real conversation with a Zionist who shuts down arguments with accusations of anti-Semitism tends to go nowhere. However, jokes aside, to be a little more real, I would like to finally end with saying that on this day, the 9th of October 2025, and over 2 years of the beginning of Israel's genocide on Palestinians, people in Gaza have hope again. Ceasefire, finally. Supposedly, Israel's illegal occupation of Palestinian land should dwindle. We'll see. But Israel remains an apartheid state in front of the world court. In front of those who fought every day in the past 734 days and prior. What remains? A whole lot of grief, worries for the future. A generation that has seen too much. A record of what was done, of who spoke up, and who looked away. History will remember both, and Palestine is still not free. Thanks for watching the video, guys. Bye-bye.